Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first podcast of Idea, where we have here as our guest the one and only Mr. Lefteri Saftis, the Idea Secretary, founding member, who is here to share with us his experience and his expertise as a psychologist, as a psychoanalyst, as a teacher of students, and a friend since we're 12 years old. We know each other better than anybody, so perfect to start the first podcast and talk about what is a project we will start together. It's called the Urban Community. So, hello, Mr. Lefteris.
Hello, Mr. Janos. It is a real honor to be here on our first podcast of IDEA, and I am very excited to get these discussions going with you and hopefully in the future with the other founding members of IDEA and other interested parties in this fantastic idea of developing urban communities and what this might look as. Thank you.
Beautiful. No. So the aim of the podcast is for the people to watch the video and to feel like they want to participate in the urban community and come up with their own ideas, and together we can shape what this urban community will look like. I would like to start straight up by asking you, what is your experience with IDEA so far, and what was that initially drew you to volunteer in IDEA?
I think what initially drew me to volunteer in IDEA was your passion as the founder of IDEA, also your dedication to try to find alternative ways of how to engage the public for the communal good, for the community. And I believe this is lacking in life. This is structures that we need more of. The person as close to me as you was the first inspiration, and over time getting to know IDEA more, being part of the developmental process of the organization and seeing the principles where IDEA lies upon and wants to develop its place within NGOs or the development of social activities is, I think, a core that I would like to associate myself with, and I think it is a core that any NGO starts with, are very, very strong founding pillars. This is what draws me to it. And I think the ideas of participation, democracy, transparency, meritocracy are all very important themes that we all need to be thinking about for a better or more sustainable future.
Maybe this is a good chance for me to just go very briefly on a history of IDEA. So as you already know, as our founding members know, we started being active in 2007, and then we actually became a union in 2009. So since then, we've tested our transparency process more than 500 times in small case study projects that we organized. And now we are at the stage of testing our shared decision-making and shared governance processes. And this is also why we're doing this urban community project, because we want now everybody who joins this urban community to start at the same level. And then we can all test as equals the different processes and maybe invent new ones or modify the existing ones. Or we don't know, we will see, right? This will be something that will be molded from all the participants. Another question I wanted to ask you is, what has been your favorite project that you have participated with IDEA so far?
Two of my favorite projects that I have participated in, one was the provision of food, meals for disadvantaged communities in some areas that one can consider a bit more socially excluded. And another very nice activity that I really enjoyed was the cross-cultural dialogues that IDEA developed between Japanese young people that had an interest within social causes and Greek people. These are two cultures that generally, maybe one can say, are far apart from each other. But when the question of the society comes in, it was a very interesting way to engage in dialogue.
Okay, so now let's get straight into our urban community project, right? And let's start our brainstorming process. So let's say right now, what is in your mind that this urban community?
How I see the first steps, I think the urban community projects would be bringing the people that are interested in such an idea and to start creating a dialogue around it, to start these initial discussions and to see what will come up. I think that would be, because we are speaking about community and creating the community of people that want to participate would be the first step before speaking about anything concrete.
So going now back to your expertise,
Yes.
I would like to ask you, what is your opinion on how does participating in community projects like Antar's impact mental health and well-being?
If we look at the parameters that psychology researchers towards creating societies where people flourish and societies where people feel more engaged, community involvement is seen as one of the most important pillars. And as you know, and I live in Denmark, where the question of community in Scandinavia is within the DNA of the culture, one might say, within the history of the culture. There's much more social trust in these places. There's much higher volunteerism. And also the role of governance is very, very important towards helping people that are more needy and more socially excluded, and that is community also. So we can see it on many levels, but from a psychological point of view, it would be part of the essential pillars of achieving well-being. Well-being is not an individual process. Partially it can be, but it is a communal process. It is a social process.
Would you even argue that feeling helpful? I always had this idea in my mind, like that I think it's one of the basic human needs to be useful to your community.
Yes, of course.
I'm not recognized as such, but I really do think is one of the basic needs that if it's not satisfied, you have a little sense of lacking, of depression, of void. I don't know.
Yes, definitely. And I think this is something we are seeing mental health issues rising drastically amongst the youth. And we are seeing them in such an exponential growth that it is becoming a public health crisis, especially depression and anxiety amongst the youngsters. And one of the reasons that I think might be a contributor towards such difficulties is our youth feeling disconnected from the outside world. And we can put many factors. Maybe we can be discussing such as technology, such as individual achievement becoming the key to success rather than my engagement with community. So, and then we can go to discussions around engaging more in capitalistic frameworks and more new liberal ideas where my success is the most important thing.
Do you think, from your experience of teaching, your students are around 20 years old, right?
Yes.
From the experience of teaching the new generation, say the new university students, is it something that they do actually participate in community projects? Do they satisfy this need?
I think I teach a biased group. I teach psychology. So straight away, the youth that I teach, you can say, have some orientation towards being more interested in what is happening in the world around them on a social and so I see with a lot of my students that finding ways of how to engage with community is important to them. But also at the same time, this does not mean that they are not struggling with their difficulties. A number of my students struggle with mental health symptoms. So I would be saying that what I am seeing is in my classes that there is a group that do want to participate and do want to make a difference. But of course, this is very dependable of many youth study in order, for example, to climb the work ladder, the hierarchy of work, and they see this as the most important thing. Doing this, maybe they lose sight of what really is the underlying reason of why we do this type of work. That it's not about my success, but it is about contributing, and success comes secondary, whatever that might mean for a person.
Another question I wanted to ask you is, what are some common psychological barriers that prevent people from getting involved in community projects? And are there ways for people to overcome?
I can speak about myself. Time is an important thing. We are living in a very fast-paced world now, with many competing requests coming to us. Another one would have been also proximity. And when I'm saying about proximity, when we're speaking about urban communities or communities that are a bit more alternative, these things take time, and also to be close geographically. And another thing is, I think, priorities. It is a mindset. It is changing your mindset, which is very important. I was the other day, it is something I haven't spoken maybe to you about. I participated in a social kitchen. And these are kitchens that are run by volunteers. These are very common in Denmark, where there is a food prepared of the day, and anyone can come and eat. They pay around 50 crowns, 50 Danish crowns. This is around 7-8 euro for the plate. And it is just to maintain its cost. So I went and I ate there with my wife. And since then, I have been exploring the social kitchens in Copenhagen. So I have been to a few, and all of them have this more alternative feel, and I have been meeting very interesting people there. And I think the participation made my mindset change. I will go and volunteer in one of them with no pressure. I will just go for 3 hours and clean onions with the people there and cut potatoes. So from it being something separate, and first time I went and I just sent an email, and then I've been a few times out for the pleasure of it, I want to participate.
What was that made you go to the first time?
I have a very dear patient in psychotherapy that I see, and he spoke to me in one of our sessions about it. And I decided I will go, what this guy is speaking about. And I visited it. And I had a very nice time. And then now I made a list with all the social kitchens that exist. So every day of the week, there are different ones around Copenhagen that you can be going to. And I have decided when I will be going out with my friends, I will only be going out to these type of places. They are my place of going out for fun.
Yeah, no, but for me, yeah, it seems much more fun to go there than to go to a fancy restaurant without saying you can't go. But for sure, it's much more interesting. You
Yes,
meet
yes.
people at the restaurant, it's you and your friend. For sure, you're not meeting anybody else.
No, and there are communal tables. You all sit together. So it's not that you're sitting by yourself, isolated in a table, and many other people from the community come. And of course, you start talking to people you wouldn't have spoken about, and you realize how interesting are all the stories of the people around you.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, as we said, right, part of this discussion, the aim is to start explaining what can we do, how can we benefit from cooperating together in an urban community. So can you share some of the ways, some practical ways you think that people can contribute or they can benefit by being part of this urban community?
There are many ways that we can contribute and benefit, yes, for each stage of life or whatever is happening in people's, maybe their contributions change, which is fine. So I was doing a project the other day with my students. It was called raising ecological awareness. And I think in our modern societies, we have developed over moralistic discussions where people are afraid to participate, not to do it wrong, or not to say the wrong thing. And I think, and if you go into the psychological research, what I say to my students, we need average activists in life. We don't need the activists that will change the landscape. If we are all average, it will be a much better world. And quite often the young are struggling with this sense of idealism in them. You know, we need to be activists. We need to all become vegans. We all need to be somehow. Sometimes I think also this has the opposite effect if we read the research, that if you are over moralistic or have too many values, you might turn people off. So in this project with my students, we are saying we're here to raise awareness, to create dialogues around eco-psychological questions. And this is what we do in our final year projects, where we make a show. A show, it is like a place where people can come and visit us. And students have done different projects of trying to raise awareness, trying to create dialogues. I think these are nice starting points, and these are nice ways of getting people to engage. There's no ideal way. It is just turn up, participate, turn up, maybe even don't speak first time. Make yourself present, and movement will happen over time.
Do you think there is other ways that we can do to create like an inclusive and environment within this urban community to ensure that everybody feels valued and heard, and that they can participate, and actually that this is something that they create together with the rest of the people, of the participants?
This question of all feeling equal, it is an ideal. You know, not everyone will always feel equal. You can see this of sometimes some people might be on the periphery and participate from the periphery, and other people might be of a more central position, and at times people from a central position might move to a periphery. So I think the points where you are able to give people as much as a voice as possible is an important starting point. And what points of discussions or where people can participate are we giving them, and are we able to reach the participants on many different levels? So I think that would be a nice starting point, but can you achieve something completely equal? Probably not. Probably it's not desired also at all times.
For me, I was thinking that what we can do is, first of all, have access to all information as a standard with ideas, so everybody knows exactly what is going on. And if we decide to invest some money in these things so we can do projects together or buy stuff we want, or I don't know, have some experiences we want, everybody will always have access to everything, so we can ensure the trust and just get it out of the way. And then I was thinking that the way we take decisions is very important. Maybe perfection doesn't exist, but we can see it as a game and try different ways of governance that we know, even for different ways of governance, we can call people who have expertise or experience in these ways of governance. And then they can educate everybody, and then we can try this for some decisions. And then have a discussion about what was good and what was bad about these things. And then next time try another one and have another discussion. And then kind of decide what suits us best. And by having this ongoing game, which personally I find extremely interesting, we can then secure being able to have this kind of environment that everybody feels they have equal opportunities, at least, to an ever-growing and larger scale of people. So we can start by 20, test a little bit these processes, change them how we like them, and then we can all have one vote for everything. And then this makes everybody participate. Only if someone doesn't feel like voting for something, they don't participate, or else everybody can have their vote. And of course, yeah, I think this could be a starting, and then see how the rest of the group decides that we move along.
I find it very insightful what you are saying, creating systems or governance and transparency where somehow the system in itself will promote people to participate. And I think, Janos, this is something you have spoken about, or we have spoken about, how people have lost trust in the modern political system, and you can see this. It is a worldwide problem, I assume, with low vote turnout, people not taking political institutions seriously anymore, and maybe the political institutions not taking seriously the people's voice.
Yeah.
It is a two-way process. So yes, I think trying to find ways of governance where people feel involved is a very important question within our modern world.
And I find it also very interesting and in a way even fun. If it's done in a way that is, if we set up rules of civilized discussion, and this is something that we will be doing, it can be really fun. Okay, so going back to your expertise in psychology, do you think there are ways that we could measure the psychological impact of participants that, let's say, participate in the urban?
Of course, there are ways. There are many psychometric scales out there that you would be able to put into action of how participation has affected well-being, maybe how involved they feel into their communities, their daily emotions. So, of course, it can be measured. But I think also we are living in a society where we need to measure everything. How successful is it? Do we have outcomes? It is like we are creating objects that are human, that is very difficult to measure also. And I will give you an example. There is the World Happiness Report that is released by the United Nations on a yearly basis. In America, during the time of Trump, happiness was falling drastically year in, year out. And one of the reasons of why happiness was falling so drastically within the community was because of the divisions that existed, because of, at that time, it was the Black Lives Matters protests happening a lot in the US, and also the Me Too movement started happening. And I think people and minorities didn't feel their voices heard. And the report came up with a conclusion. In order to be able to make up for these losses in reduction of happiness, each participant, I will give you a rough number, I might be wrong, each member of the public would need to be given $40,000 extra of income per year. So social trust can have a much bigger impact on our well-being than income after we have reached a good level of income. You understand? Yeah. So this is what I am trying to say, and they were trying to balance, we're trying to increase GDP. That is something very measurable, gross domestic product. Everyone is speaking about of how well the government is doing. But the World Happiness Report was saying, no, this is the wrong way, because during the Trump era, GDP was going up. The finances of the US were doing well. And this is not only in the US, but social trust was reducing. And the happiness of people were reducing, even though their wallets were becoming thicker. And the economy is something easy to measure.
Are you proposing that we shouldn't measure these things in our case?
No, I think we have to measure them. One, because we need to be communicating within modern systems, but also we need to be acknowledging the limitations that measurement has at times. But of course, as idea, we need to develop something because we are an organization that works in the 21st century.
Okay. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to get involved in the urban community, but they don't know where to start? let's say they will get the invite, right? And they will get also this video, and hopefully they will watch it. And then they feel like, okay, I want to play. Oh, but maybe they're having different things in their mind, like different barriers, like they think, "Oh, I don't know, will I have time? Is this going to be worthwhile? Is it this or that? Whatever. What would you recommend to them? What would you advise?
Turn up, make friends that are interested in these ideas. And you don't need to do a lot maybe in the beginning, just turn up and open up your ears and participate. And I think maybe that's when movement starts happening, internal.
I would agree. Turn up and see what happens.
Yes.
And now if we're going to talk a little bit about the future, what would be a vision you have for the future of the urban community? What could it look like?
In an ideal world, I would like the urban community to be a model of how alternative communities can function that are based on principles of sustainability, of different forms of education, different ways of sharing labor, where value lies. For example, my wife is a dentist, as you know, and very often she exchanges her dentistry for building work in the house. Some of her patients are builders, and they're exchanging.
Okay.
I think this is the most sustainable way to do business. I see it. You understand that someone has something to offer, and the other person something else. Okay, I'll do your teeth. Come and change. I don't know, my door or something. And this happens a lot. So we all have something to offer. And then another part of the urban community would be for it to, the governance of it, to be a model also of how places can be governed.
Yeah. I mean, for me, what I would like to see in the future is this urban community acting as a model, as you said, for strangers to be able to collaborate with trust and respect, even if they never met each other.
Yes.
Then this to allow for people around the world to collaborate in certain things, not in everything, but even be able to collaborate with people that they've never met and still be able to feel trust and secure in this creation that we want to do.
Can I ask you, Janos, what do you believe are the barriers? Because you asked me earlier about the barriers, and we're speaking about how to get people to collaborate. What do you think are the barriers that haven't made these popular?
I think a very important barrier that I've been seeing around the world, not just in Greece, is a little bit of lack of hope existing. So many people, when it comes to participating in something like this, they are combined with something being not very pleasant. Let's say maybe something boring, maybe something necessary, but hard or even impossible to have a real impact, right? So then I think a barrier is that when you, let's say, propose to somebody, come and do a beach cleanup, then of course there are the barriers, man, I don't have time, I want to spend time with my family, or all these barriers that we have. But I think for me, a very big barrier is that we don't unite because we think it's impossible. We think it's like, oh man, we're never gonna find a way to actually collaborate. We are fighting with the neighbor. How are we gonna find now a way to collaborate, many people and many strangers? So I think this is one of the main things, apart from all the things that someone can think as a barrier, mostly time, I would say, that people need to pay the bills, need to be okay in this ever expensive, everything is getting more expensive. But the reason why we accept some things that we don't particularly agree with, I think the reason why we accept them is because somehow someone convinced us that maybe there's nothing we can do about it.
Mm, mm.
So we're like, what can you do? Things are like this. Let me just do now the best I can. Some things that need change and they're fundamental, they cannot be changed. I think this is something that if we change this notion, I think we will all be a bit better. You know, we will be more. We will all be a little bit more active in general. I don't know. How does this sound from psychologist perspective?
I think the dynamics you're speaking about is yes, but we are seeing it also in research. People are much less hopeful. Caroline Hickman, she's a researcher in Bath University. This is a piece of research that was published in the Lancet Journal, I think 2023. So it is 10,000 youth they took around the world, 16 to 24 from what I remember. And this was about the future of the planet and trust in governance. Around 60 to 70% of the youth feel very, very pessimistic about the future of the planet. And also around 65% or to 70 have very low trust that modern governance can solve the problems. And even a more worrying statistic that around 40 to 50%, I can get the statistics out, they're hesitant to have children because of the state of the planet. That shows very low hope.
I think these things, especially when we're talking about the government and how we don't trust the government, I totally understand why people don't trust the government or why people don't trust certain non-governmental organizations or other kinds of organizations. But I think it's important to show our distrust and express it and not support as much as we can institutions that we don't trust. But at the same time, I think when it comes to the government, we should also, as citizens, be like, okay, my government is not doing it the way I think is ideal. Let me show them how it should be done. And in a way, this is one of the things I would like to see in this urban community, right? Let's show how constructive conversations can happen. Let's show how a lot of people can take shared decisions and build something nice that benefits them together, let's say.
There are already, many people taking such initiatives through urban communities or different political parties, but they never reach. It is always something, on the side happening where people will go and visit it as an academic concept or look, but it never becomes mainstream. And this is something that I don't have an answer to, but I think about it. There are people out there already.
I think the reason why we don't know something like this, that it's very big already, maybe it's because people didn't manage to find shared values, or what I would bet that is the main problem is that people, when they create something, they want to control it also because they created it. And then when two people that created something are going to work together, sometimes there is a power struggle. And then you're like, okay, now I created something. I don't want to lose the control of it. So I'm not going to, with these people who don't agree to come under, let's say. So I think to try to also find ways to overcome this problem. I think there is many discussions that can come up through podcasts like this, and ideally when more people will participate and come up with their comments and their ideas, I think it's going to become more and more interesting. So, Mr. Lefteris, if you don't have something more to add, I would really like to thank you for your participation and for all these beautiful things you shared with us from your expertise. And yeah, would you like to say something to close our first ever podcast?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. It has been a real pleasure starting these discussions. I look forward to continuing these discussions, and I hope this is one of many to follow. So thank you, fellows.
Okay. To the founding members that you are listening to this, hopefully this message, you know what to